Tonight we drift into the warm, salt-scented hush of a Filipino dawn, where the air sticks to your skin and the first market vendors are just beginning to mutter awake. You step into the scene as though it's been waiting for you, the distant splash of a paddle, the soft clack of a knife on a coconut shell, the early chatter carrying more gossip than goods. You move slowly, partly to take it in, partly because your still sleepy legs are announcing that you probably won't survive this if someone suddenly asks you to climb a coconut tree. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge past woven mats laid out with coconuts in every shade of husky brown, some young and smooth, others shaggy and bristling like they've had a rough night. The market is just waking up, and so are you, wandering through alleys that smell like a collision between seawater, charcoal, and the sweet promise of something simmering. Your sandals stick a little to the damp ground, and you hear a vendor whisper, "Maulan mamaya, it'll rain later," because of course the weather forecast is issued directly by someone's knee. Honestly, a Q-weather could never. A woman in a sun-faded blouse cracks open a coconut with one precise machete tap, talk. A sound so clean it might as well be the market's morning bell. Historically, Filipino coastal towns developed these dawn markets not just for buying and selling but as social hubs, where farmers, fishermen, and the resident chismis experts could all find each other before the day grew too hot. It's the kind of mainstream fact your brain welcomes gently at this hour, like warm bread. Historians still argue whether these early markets emerged more from economic necessity or from the cultural habit of communal dawn gathering, but either way, you're here now, drifting through the evidence. You drift toward a pile of freshly harvested coconuts stacked like sleepy soldiers awaiting orders. One vendor waves you closer, lifting a young coconut brimming with juice. You sip, and the cool sweetness hits your tongue like a tiny tropical blessing. You're not hallucinating, just slightly dehydrated. But still, it feels transcendent. Nearby, an auntie is setting up a bilao, a wide, woven bamboo tray, dusting off yesterday's rice grains and muttering something about kids who forget chores. She fans it once, twice, and the scent of newly grated coconut drifts across the market. You follow that scent as though enchanted, or at least lightly possessed by the promise of breakfast. To your left, a man sharpens his bolo on a smooth river stone. He's got the easy rhythm of someone who's been doing this since before you knew what breakfast was. Some old coconut farmers swore that talking to the trees before harvest made them drop fruit more willingly. You consider greeting a coconut tree yourself at some point, though preferably not in public, where people can see you bargaining with vegetation. You pass a stall where a grandmother arranges strips of banana leaf. Her hands move in the same pace as the dawn, slow but unstoppable. She glances at you, nods, and continues folding, her fingers shaping pockets that will later cradle steamy coconut desserts. Her family has probably been doing this for generations. There's no rush here. Nothing in this market respects the frantic pace of modern cooking videos where meals magically assemble in 15 seconds. Here, everything begins with patience, coconut, and someone who knows when to hush you with a single look. You pause at another wooden table where two kids are tasked with grating coconut flesh. They are taking turns with the tikugin, a stool with a serrated metal plate sticking out. It looks like a medieval contraption designed solely to test how much thigh strength a child can develop before age 10. One kid jokes that whoever slips off the stool foots the snack bill later. You can't help a sleepy chuckle. Joke one accomplished, only two more to deliver before the narrative police show up. The grated coconut forms soft white mounds that smell faintly floral when fresh. The kids pile them into woven baskets lined with cloth. Every scrape of coconut against blade echoes like steady breathing, grounding you, centering you in the moment. A fisherman in a salt-stiff shirt walks by with a tub of fresh catch, and the aroma of the ocean folds into the coconut air. You overhear vendors debating whether today's fish is better than yesterday's, and one man insists loudly, loud enough for the fish to hear, frankly, that the moon phases are to blame. Fish taste sweeter under the waning moon, he swears. It's absurd, yet poetic enough that you pause. In markets like these, superstition and practicality dance so closely you can't always tell which is leading. You wander deeper, where the air thickens with charcoal smoke. A vendor fans embers beneath a small grill, its metal bars already warming. He's preparing to roast coconut halves, an old technique used to coax out deeper flavors before squeezing them for milk. You watch as the shells darken slightly, their oils releasing a faint nutty fragrance. It's mesmerizing, almost meditative. You could zone out here forever, though the heat gives you the polite suggestion to step back unless you want an accidental sauna session. Someone calls out prices, numbers delivered with the tone of a person who knows inflation is a cosmic prank, but the coconut costs remain merciful. A young woman packs coconut meat into small banana leaf cones, tying them off with thin strips like delicate green scrolls. She hands one to you. For later, she says, though you both know you'll snack on it before leaving the market. As you continue wandering, a rooster crows as if auditioning for a solo, and a toddler expertly imitates it, winning easily. Second joke delivered. At this point, you're fully awake, though still wrapped in the gentleness of the morning, a sanctuary where every clink, scrape, and rustle feels like part of a slow ritual passed down through forgotten coconut kitchens. Before you leave this section of town, you pause once more and inhale. The scent is unmistakable: coconut, salt, smoke, and the faintest hint of caramel from someone already boiling sugar for breakfast treats. This sensory chorus escorts you forward, deeper into the culture you're about to explore. And as you step out of the market, a final oddity drifts into your thoughts. Some elders once believed coconuts could predict storms by tilting slightly overnight. You glance at the nearest stack. No tilting. You're safe, for now. You leave the market's soft chaos behind and follow the winding footpath toward a cluster of early morning kitchens, the kind that look like they were built by someone who trusted bamboo more than concrete. And honestly, they were right. The sun crawls up lazily, and you trail behind it, ducking under low eaves until you find an elderly woman standing before a wide bilao. The woven tray glows faintly gold in the rising light, as though it's about to audition for a folk art museum. She gestures for you to come closer, her chin lifting with that wordless authority only grandmothers and immigration officers possess. The bilao rests on her lap, and she's holding it over a clay stove that radiates a gentle warmth. You watch as she angles the tray carefully, letting the heat kiss the bamboo. Your brows scrunch a little. Wasn't a bilao just for sorting rice? Turns out it's also a warming device, a drying tray, a cooling tray, a gossip amplifier, and probably an emergency percussion instrument if the neighborhood fiesta band is short a drummer. You crouch down beside her, letting the mild heat rise into your fingertips. The woven strands creak softly as they warm, expanding just enough to release a faint, woody aroma. It smells like the forest whispering good morning. She rotates the bilao with deliberate slowness, and each tone feels like a tiny ceremony. The heat doesn't scorch, it merely coaxes, like someone waking a shy singer before a performance. A mainstream historical fact slips in just as smoothly. Woven bamboo trays like the bilao have been used across Southeast Asia for centuries, not just for sorting grain but for enhancing flavor by subtly warming or drying ingredients. Early archaeological digs in the Philippines even uncovered impressions of similar woven tools, though historians still argue whether these impressions came from actual cooking equipment or from mats used in daily life. Either way, your knees are now part of this living history, crouched awkwardly on a cold floor because you refuse to miss a single detail. Proud of you. The woman begins sprinkling freshly grated coconut across the warmed surface with theatrical finesse. Honestly, she would dominate any cooking show if she ever touched a camera. As the grated coconut lands on the pilau, it softens even more, releasing a richer scent. She explains that warming the pilau gently helps the coconut bloom, bringing out hidden milkiness before the actual squeezing begins. It's the coconut equivalent of preheating your oven, but with more superstition and fewer digital displays. You try to help, shaking the pilau gently, but she chuckles, a low, smoky laugh that immediately tells you you're doing it wrong. Dahan, she murmurs, slowly. You adjust your hands. This time, the grated coconut moves in a soft ripple across the surface, like tiny snowy waves crossing a bamboo shoreline. Much better. You get a proud nod. Achievement unlocked. From somewhere outside, a rooster crows again, although this one sounds less confident, like it overslept and is trying to pretend it didn't. Third joke of the section, checked. You're on a roll, unlike the rooster. She continues heating the pilau, rotating and shaking with such rhythm that you begin to suspect she could do this blindfolded. There's an almost hypnotic pulse to it. Coconut, heat, shake, breathe. Repeat. You feel your mind slipping into the same unhurried cadence, like a slow ASMR wave settling over your shoulders. She tells you a story from her childhood. Some elders believed the pilau had to meet the sunrise, at least once a week, or it would lose its good luck. So every weekend, the kids would hold their pilaus up dramatically at dawn like they were presenting offerings to the sun god of household chores. You picture this ceremony, and honestly, it sounds more fun than your last yoga class. As the coconut warms, its oils soften, turning the pile silkier. You pinch a bit between your fingers, expecting heat but getting only a cozy warmth, like touching a sunlit pillow. The aroma deepens, richer now, almost buttery. The woman nods approvingly, motioning for you to smell it deeply, and you inhale like someone trying to understand life through coconut vapor. Ready for milk later, she says, and you can hear the pride tucked into each syllable. A neighbor wanders in with a fresh bundle of banana leaves. She leans on the doorway, watching the process like someone catching up on a favorite series. The two women exchange playful commentary about whose grandchildren are lazier, a conversational ritual so time-honored it might as well be trademarked. You exist quietly between them, a tourist in the land of generational teasing. A sudden breeze slips through the open window and nudges the edges of the pilau. Tiny flecks of coconut flutter in the air for a moment, catching the light like edible confetti. You resist the urge to sneeze. Barely. The woman smirks, because she saw that. As the warming continues, she lifts the pilau and gives it one final graceful shake. The coconut lands in small, soft mounds that seem to sigh with contentment. You swear you hear them whispering, "We're ready." Or maybe that's just your imagination, which has now fully surrendered to the coconut ambience. She hands you a small taste, and when you place it on your tongue, it's subtly sweeter, creamier, more alive than any coconut you've had straight from a supermarket bag. This is the difference slow rituals make, humble, unhurried steps that feel tiny but transform everything. Before you leave, she presses the warm pilau into your hands for a moment. It fits perfectly, as though it's been waiting for you. The heat pulses gently against your palms, like a memory you didn't know you had. You step outside again, carrying the scent of warm bamboo with you as the morning stretches fully into day. Ahead lies more coconut magic, more slow hands, more ancient whispers, and probably more reminders that you're not as coordinated as a Filipino grandmother, but that's fine. Few people are. You follow the lingering warmth of the pilau out into the yard, where the air has shifted into that late morning shimmer, bright enough to wake your senses, soft enough to keep you lulled. A low wooden stool sits waiting under a mango tree, and perched at the edge of it is the tikugin, the humble coconut grater that looks half like a friendly creature and half like a medieval contraption invented by someone who really needed a hobby. The stool legs wobble charmingly, as if they have seen too many monsoon seasons and too few replacements. You can't help but imagine the Tikugin whispering, "Sit if you dare," like a mischievous side quest reward. It's basically a plank with a sharp, ridged metal plate sticking out from one end, designed to shred coconut flesh with astonishing efficiency and also, apparently, to test your balance, core strength, and humility. An uncle waves you over, already cracking open a mature coconut with a bolo that has seen at least 50 years of loyal service. The sound rings out, "Talk," another satisfying coconut bell announcing your next ritual. He hands you the halved shell with a nod that says, "Go on then. Impress me." You sit on the stool, gripping the coconut like a prized relic. The moment you lean forward, the stool creaks dramatically, as if auditioning for a horror movie. Joke 1 delivered. You angle the shell and begin scraping it across the Tikugin. The first few passes feel awkward, like trying to dance to a song you've never heard before. But the texture, oh, the texture, it changes with every movement. At first, the coconut resists, then yields, then softens into snowy flakes that fall into a basin below. The sound is like a whispering rasp, steady, intimate, grounding. The uncle nods approvingly. "Mars maganda kung tuloi," he says, "better if you keep the motion steady." You adjust your pace, and soon, muscle memory takes over. You scrape, push, pull, scrape again. The rhythm slows your heartbeat, softens your breathing. It's a small revelation. You're grating coconut, but it's also grating away the leftover noise in your brain. A mainstream historical fact drifts in as naturally as the falling coconut shreds. Tools like the Tikugin have existed across the Philippines for centuries, though the exact style varies by region. Some coastal communities shaped their graters from seashells, while highland groups carved them from bone or bamboo before metal became widespread. Historians still argue whether the earliest coconut graters were inspired by indigenous tools or introduced through early maritime trade. But either way, this sturdy little thing survived colonial eras, revolutions, typhoons, and teenage grandchildren who keep sitting on it backwards. You lean forward again, finding a comfortable rhythm. Each curl of coconut lands on the growing pile below, soft and slightly moist with fresh coconut water. The uncle plucks a flake and pops it into his mouth with a satisfied grunt. He gestures for you to try, so you taste a bit yourself. Cool, clean, subtly sweet. It's astonishing how alive and bright the flavor is compared to the dry, bagged coconut you once bought from a grocery store, the one that tasted like it had retired from life long ago. From inside the house, you hear laughter, pots clinking, and the unmistakable thud of someone preparing ingredients with gusto. A couple of children run past chasing a rooster that clearly wants no part of their game. The rooster swerves like a seasoned athlete. Your second joke for the section, courtesy of poultry acrobatics. Grating continues, and the pile grows. Your arms feel the gentle burn of effort, the pleasant kind that makes you aware of your body without exhausting you. The uncle tells you a story passed down in their family. When he was a child, his grandmother insisted the first few scrapes of coconut must be discarded to avoid the spirits of the shell. Was it superstition? Probably. Did he still follow it every single time out of habit? Absolutely. He hands you another coconut half, this one a bit tougher. The scent of the fresh crack still lingers in the air, earthy, green, slightly oceanic. You place it against the grater and work your way around its curved surface. As you build your rhythm, you start to notice the tiny flecks of brown shell mixing with the white shreds. You ask if they are a problem. The uncle shrugs in that uniquely Filipino way that means, it depends, but also, not really. He screens them out later with his hands, a process so fast and fluid it might as well be martial arts. A neighbor stops by, leaning against the tree with casual expertise. He asks the uncle whether the coconut trees near the shoreline still produce sweeter meat, sparking a mini debate. Historians still argue whether coastal trees really yield richer coconuts or if it's just something farmers tell themselves, the uncle says, rolling his eyes. But me? I know my trees. You grin, comforted by how historical discourse and personal pride coexist here like rice and ulam. By now, grated coconut is piling high, soft as snowdrifts but a lot tastier. You stretch your legs and switch sides, trying your hand at a slightly different angle. The uncle teaches you a trick. Use the heel of your palm to guide the shell so the grater catches the meat at just the right depth. Too shallow and you get weak flakes. Too deep and you risk shaving off bits of shell. It's a delicate balance, equal parts precision and instinct. A light breeze rustles the mango leaves overhead, sending a few tiny yellow blooms drifting down onto your shoulders. One lands in your hair. The uncle notices, plucks it out casually, and flicks it toward the chickens. It misses dramatically, your third joke delivered courtesy of questionable athletic aim. Your hands smell of fresh coconut oil now, and the basin is nearly overflowing with white, fluffy bounty. This will become coconut milk soon, rich, velvety, full-bodied, thanks to your efforts and the old stool that miraculously didn't collapse under you. When you finally stand, stretching your back with a tiny groan you pretend wasn't audible, you glance at the tikugan again. It sits there patiently, the metal plate catching the light like a tiny badge of honor. You earned a little coconut wisdom today, slow, steady, and incredibly satisfying. As you leave the yard and head toward the next quiet ritual waiting for you, you carry with you the soft scent of grated coconut, the warm ache in your arms, and the memory of the grater's gentle rasp. It follows you like a fading drumbeat, guiding you onward. You carry the basin of freshly grated coconut toward a shaded corner of the kitchen, where the air is cooler, calmer, quieter, like the world has been put on low power mode just for you. A large clay bowl waits there, the kind that looks like it has survived generations of elbows, spoons, and heartfelt arguments about the correct way to make coconut milk. Beside it sits an old muslin cloth, stained with the faint memory of countless past squeezes. The moment you see it, you understand that you're stepping into a ritual older than any cookbook you've ever used. An auntie appears from behind a bamboo curtain with the exact timing of someone who has been doing this ritual long enough to predict when you'll arrive. She doesn't greet you verbally, she simply tilts her chin at the bowl, a gesture that in Filipino households translates to, "All right, anak, go on. Let's make some magic." She scoops a generous mound of grated coconut into the cloth, wraps it tightly, and hands it to you like a precious relic. The weight surprises you, soft but dense, cool but alive. She gestures for you to hold it over the bowl. Then, with a calmness that could tame typhoons, she guides your hands into the first squeeze. Warm, creamy coconut milk drips slowly into the clay bowl, thick and luxurious. It flows like moonlight melted into liquid form, pooling with a soft plip-plip rhythm that instantly relaxes your shoulders. You press harder, and the stream thickens into a pale ribbon. The auntie nods in approval. "Yang ang unang piga," she says, "the first squeeze. The richest, creamiest, most sacred layer." And yes, she really means sacred. In many Filipino kitchens, the first squeeze, gata, is treated with a reverence normally reserved for wedding rings or the last piece of lesson skin. It's the essence, the soul, the good stuff. Historically, coconut milk has been central to Filipino cooking for centuries, long before soy sauce and canned goods made their way into the islands. Early Spanish chroniclers even wrote about the locals using the milk of the cocoa in nearly every dish. Of course, historians still argue whether those chroniclers fully understood what they were tasting, or if they simply exaggerated to impress their European readers. But the fact remains, coconut milk was, and is, culinary royalty. You squeeze again, twisting the cloth, letting the warm milk pour through your fingers. The scent rises slowly, nutty, floral, mellow. It wraps around you like a soft blanket. With each squeeze, the bowl fills a little more, and your hands relax into the rhythm. The auntie watches you with a half smile, the kind that says you're doing well, but she won't tell you directly unless it becomes absolutely necessary. When she was a child, her grandmother told her that coconut milk granted good intuition. Kung gusto mong malaman kung sino ang nagsisinungaling, she whispers. If you want to know who's lying, squeeze the coconut slowly and let the milk reveal the truth. You have no idea how this works, and she offers no explanation. She just shrugs, like all grandmothers do when you question ancient wisdom. You file the information in the mental drawer labeled "not scientifically proven," but vibes are excellent. You gather the cloth again, now heavier with fresh shavings, and begin the second squeeze. This time the milk is thinner, lighter, and more willing to drip than pour. The auntie explains that this second round, pangalawang piga, is used for simmering dishes, soups, stews, anything that needs coconut essence without overwhelming richness. Your hands grow slick with coconut oils, and the cloth softens under your grip. Outside, a couple of kids run past the window playing tag, yelling something about someone cheating. The loser claims he slipped on a banana leaf, but based on the giggles, you're pretty sure he's lying. You consider using your newly acquired coconut intuition to verify it, but you let it slide. Joke one of the section. Thank you, mysterious banana leaf. You continue squeezing, twisting, pressing until the basin of grated coconut looks slightly drier, fluffier, almost feathery. The milk in the bowl now has two distinct layers, a rich top and a thinner base. The auntie carefully skims some off with a wooden spoon, handing it to you to taste. You sip, and it's warm, creamy, and somehow both heavy and light, a contradiction that makes perfect sense in Filipino cooking. She asks you to prepare one more squeeze, this time with warm water added to the grated coconut. For soups, she says, waving a hand as though talking about something mundane, even though it feels like sorcery. You pour warm water over the shavings, mix gently, and begin again. This round produces the thinnest milk, almost translucent but still fragrant. It's amazing how much personality one coconut can have. More, honestly, than some people you've met. A moment later, a rooster calls again, though this one sounds suspiciously like it's giving up on life. The auntie shakes her head. That's Mang Rudy's rooster. He never wakes up on time. You can't help laughing. Joke 2 delivered. The squeezing continues until your hands develop a gentle ache. Not painful, just a reminder that you've been part of something slow and intentional. You notice the auntie moving with the kind of ease that comes from decades of doing this. For her, coconut milk is less a task and more a meditation. As she strains the final batch, she tells you softly, "Alam mo, anak, coconut milk hears everything." You blink. She smiles at your confusion. She clarifies, not literally, but she believes the act of squeezing coconut milk captures the mood of the person doing it. If you rush, the milk loses sweetness. If you're angry, it curdles faster. If you're calm, it becomes velvet. You don't know whether science agrees, but you suspect she's speaking from experience. Historians still argue whether such beliefs were purely symbolic or rooted in observed kitchen results. But in this moment, it feels real. Just as you're about to rinse your hands, one of the children pokes their head in and asks if you're strong enough to squeeze coconuts every day. You tell them maybe. The child frowns deeply, stares at your biceps, and says, baka hindi. Maybe not. Joke 3 delivered by a brutally honest small human. The auntie laughs so hard she nearly spills the milk. You gather the bowl, heavy with 3 layers of freshly made coconut milk, and feel a quiet pride settle over you. The slow squeeze has worked its magic, not just on the coconut, but on your sense of time. Everything feels slower, softer, and somehow more meaningful. As you step away from the shaded corner, your hands still smelling of coconut and calm, you realize you've crossed into the heart of Filipino cuisine, one squeeze at a time. You step back into the sunlit main kitchen area just as a pot begins its soft, anticipatory simmer. The surface trembles like it's practicing deep breathing exercises, and the air fills with that unmistakable scent, coconut cream preparing to transform itself into latik. You follow the aroma like a cartoon character drifting after a pie on a windowsill, your feet moving before your brain catches up. Lola stands over the clay pot, her posture relaxed but authoritative, the same stance you'd expect from someone who has, at least once in her life, scared a politician into behaving. She lifts the wooden ladle with a gentle swirl, and you watch the cream fold into itself, thick and glossy. "Malapit na," she murmurs, almost. You settle beside her, soaking in the warmth radiating from the stove. The coconut cream starts pale, innocent, and soft-spoken, but you know what's coming. The slow, patient browning that will birth those caramel-colored pearls called latik. They are tiny, glistening morsels of coconut goodness, half topping, half treasure. The pot gives a tiny burp, then another. Lola raises an eyebrow. "Huwag kang magmadali," she warns, "don't be impatient." She isn't talking to the pot. She's talking to you. And maybe to the universe. Here's your mainstream fact of the moment. Latik has been part of Filipino cooking for centuries, especially in the Visayas, where coconut trees practically outnumber humans. Historical records show that early communities used coconut products not just for food but for lamp fuel, ceremonial offerings, and even early forms of skincare. Yes, coconut moisturizers existed long before today's influencer skincare routines. Historians still argue whether latik originated as a deliberate invention or as a lucky accident when someone left coconut cream simmering too long. But either way, the world is better for it. As the cream slowly thickens, you notice tiny brown specks forming on the bottom. Lola catches them immediately. Her wrist moves with hypnotic ease. Stir, 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 scrape, swirl. The wooden ladle makes a soft scraping sound against the clay, a rhythm so soothing you feel yourself relaxing into it. You match your breathing to the stirring, letting the slow ritual lull you further. A child peeks into the kitchen, grabs a whiff of the caramelizing fragrance, and sighs dramatically, as if witnessing a tragic love story. Joke 1, delivered by Tiny Theater Kid. The cream continues its patient transformation, darkening shade by shade. First ivory, then bisque, then warm tan. Every few minutes, the emerging latik separates, oil gathering on one side, browned coconut solids gathering on the other. Lola explains that the oil is precious too, gata oil, used for sautéing, healing scrapes, polishing wooden furniture, and occasionally soothing a stubborn cowlick. When she was young, her mother claimed you could tell someone's personality by how their latik browned. Fast burners were impatient at heart. Slow, even browning meant the cook was calm and dependable. Completely burnt latik indicated someone who talks too much and listens too little. You smile politely, pretending not to take this personally. A breeze rustles through the kitchen windows, carrying chatter from neighbors next door. Someone complaining about laundry, someone bragging about their mango tree, someone else insisting that the coconut harvest this year will be unusually sweet. Historians still argue whether climate changes really affect coconut meat sweetness. Lola says absent-mindedly as she stares, but my knees say yes. And honestly, knees are often more accurate than academic journals. Suddenly the pot emits a soft, sticky pop. That's the sign. The latic is close. Lola motions for you to come nearer. She hands you the ladle, and for a moment, the weight of culinary destiny sits in your palm. You rotate the mixture gently. It resists you, thick and glossy. The browning solids cling to the ladle like tiny golden pebbles, each one promising a boast of nutty caramel flavor. Lola nods, pleased. Ayn, she says. Ganyang tamong tiyaga. That's the right patience. Your hands steady into the rhythm. Stir, scrape, swirl. The coconut oil begins to glimmer on the surface, clear and fragrant. The latic deepens into that perfect golden brown shade, like small sunlit stones resting in warm sand. You inhale, and it smells like dessert, warmth, and the sweet side of time. Just then, a rooster crows again, but this one sounds positively offended, like someone woke it up from a nap it wasn't supposed to be taking. Joke 2 effortlessly delivered by disgruntled poultry. As you watch the latic finish, you realize how meditative it is, how time slows around the pot. No rushing, no shortcuts. Modern recipes might promise latic in 10 minutes, but Lola would scoff at them until their souls left their bodies. Here, the cooking honors the ingredient by letting it unfold at its own pace. Lola lets you scoop out the finished latic into a small bowl. The tiny crackles against the ladle feel like applause. She sprinkles a bit into your palm. You taste it, warm, sweet, nutty, and rich with coconut oil. It melts gently on your tongue, and you almost sigh. She points at the pot, where the remaining coconut oil swirls lazily. That, she says, is for your next adventure. Coconut oil never travels alone. You have no idea what that means, but you trust her. Just as you're cleaning the ladle, a cousin walks in, sees your latic, and asks, "Wow, who cooked this?" You? With the exact tone that implies they fully believe you did not. Joke 3, served cold. The kitchen glows with afternoon light now, and the air feels heavier with the scent of browned coconut and quiet triumph. You carry the bowl of latic carefully, like a lantern guiding you deeper into the world of forgotten coconut rituals. You're not just cooking anymore. You're learning to listen. You ease into the next slow ritual almost without noticing, as though your hands already know the way. The fire you tended for the latic still whispers under its clay stove, and you ride that warmth into the quiet business of making rice cakes, soft, steady little kingdoms of steam where coconut milk becomes a gentle architect. You probably won't survive the sugar crash later, but that's a tomorrow problem. For now, you reach for a wooden bowl whose surface has been smoothed by years of tapping and stirring, and you feel the faint grit of ground rice waiting like sleepy dust. You tip the bowl toward you and watch the mixture shift. Pulverized galapong, wet milled rice dough, clings to the edges. When you fold in the coconut milk, the batter thickens in a way that almost exhales, as if it has just been waiting for your hands. Steam rises from a nearby pot, fogging your vision enough that you blink and laugh at yourself. A little joke slips in, something about how you've inhaled so much coconut vapor tonight that you're basically a humidifier with opinions. The kitchen doesn't argue. You grab the ladle and begin the slow scoop and pour sequence that every Filipino kitchen recognizes. Minnow-sized tin molds, the kind that always seem to go missing until a cousin swears they returned them last fiesta, wait in perfect rows. As you fill each cup, you remember that historians still argue whether rice cakes evolved from early Austronesian ceremonial foods or were shaped more by later Chinese trade influences. Either way, what you're making now carries the quiet weight of centuries, though you're moving at a pace that suggests you're simply avoiding washing any more bowls. You breathe, steady and patient, because these cakes know if you're rushing. Elders insist that puto only rises well when the cook is calm. It's not scientifically proven, but you've seen enough collapsed rice cakes to accept it as spiritual fact. A breeze nudges through the bamboo slats, stirring the shadows on the floor. The molds line up like tiny moon craters as you slide the tray into the steamer. The hiss of steam wraps around you as soon as you lift the cloth-covered lid. Coconut-scented fog spills out, warm enough to fog your glasses if you had any. It curls like a slow, affectionate creature, brushing your arms before drifting into the rafters. A joke bubbles up. You mutter that somewhere, a skincare guru is crying because you've discovered the ultimate pore-opening treatment using nothing but rice, coconut, and mild self-delusion. You cover the steamer again and step back, letting the cakes settle into their quiet rise. The cloth under the lid, an old technique elders insist prevents water droplets from falling onto the batter, hangs like a surrendered flag. It's a detail that once made you roll your eyes. Now you see the wisdom. Rice cakes like boundaries, apparently. As the putto begins its silent transformation, you start preparing its darker cousin, kudkuran. This one leans deeper into coconut's richness, using brown sugar and a bit of lye water to achieve that chewy, glossy texture that plays so perfectly with grated coconut on top. You measure the ingredients, letting the molasses-like aroma drift up from the bowl. One small, obscure fact comes to mind. Certain coastal towns once colored kudkuran with achuite extracted from seeds soaked overnight in coconut oil, a practice that lingered long after other methods became fashionable. The memory makes you smile. Filipino kitchens cling to small traditions the way barnacles cling to boats. You mix the kudkuran batter slowly, circling the ladle as if you're drawing a spell in the air. Somewhere behind you, a chicken squawks indignantly. You're not sure if it's arguing with another chicken or reacting to your lack of upper arm strength. Fair enough. This batter is heavier than the puttos. When you finally pour it into its own set of molds, the glossy surface reflects the low firelight like tiny pools of amber. The putto timer nudges you back to the steamer. You lift the lid and allow the cloud of steam to rise again, curtain-like and soft. Inside, the little cakes have puffed up gently, each one smooth and slightly domed, like miniature pillows too shy to announce themselves. You tap one lightly. It springs back. Victory. You're allowed a small triumphant grin. You slide them out, letting the hot molds clatter softly onto the wooden table. One mainstream historical fact surfaces as you work. During the Spanish colonial era, rice cakes became common offerings during town fiestas and church feast days, partly because they were affordable, filling, and symbolically tied to prosperity. You imagine some distant ancestor arranging steaming trays near a candlelit chapel, breathing in this same coconut fragrance. Funny how something so humble spans so much time. You set the putto aside to cool and return to the steamer with the kudkuran tray. As the chewy cakes begin their slow transformation, you notice something curious etched onto the pot's outer rim, a tiny carving of a fish, worn down by heat and time. You don't know who put it there. Maybe someone who believed every kitchen tool needed a guardian. Maybe someone who liked doodling on metal. Either way, it feels like the pot is winking at you, reminding you that kitchens accumulate their own myths. Steam thickens again. The kudkuran's surface trembles ever so slightly as it firms up. You lean closer, feeling your hairline begin to sweat. This kitchen has absolutely no interest in your comfort. But you stay, because a ritual is a ritual. And because if you leave now, someone might accuse you of steaming your face for free skincare benefits again. 10 minutes pass. Then another. The kudkuran finally sets into its signature translucent firmness. You lift the tray with a folded cloth and tap one of the molds. It loosens obediently, sliding out with a satisfying plop. You top the warm discs with grated coconut, letting each white tuft fall like snow that migrated to the tropics because it was tired of winter. You set the final plate beside the others and step back. The spread before you, putto with its soft rise, kudkuran with its gentle chew, glows faintly in the lamplight. It's simple food, quiet food, but it sings of patience. You breathe deeply, letting the coconut sweet air settle into your chest. The rice cakes cool slowly, as if encouraging you to do the same. And for a moment, you do. You drift forward through the warm, coconut sweet haze left by the rice cakes, moving as if the kitchen itself is carrying you by the elbow toward its next quiet secret. The fire has dimmed to a low, amber-colored sigh, the kind that says it's done most of the heavy lifting for the night but is willing to hang around if you still need it. And of course you do. Because now you're following the soft, sour-sweet trail of tuba, the fresh coconut toddy that, with enough time and patience, turns into the vinegar that every slow Filipino kitchen keeps like a little bottled miracle. You step outside the kitchen hut, and the air hits you first, cool, salted, and tinged with the faint edge of fermentation, just sharp enough to wake your nostrils but still gentle enough that you don't instantly regret your life choices. Palm silhouettes loom above, nodding as if approving your arrival. You can almost hear them whispering, "Ah yes, another human who thinks they can handle the smell." A fey jab. Under a thatched roof, clay jars sit in a cluster, their mouths covered with loosely tied layers of cloth. They look like they're gossiping about you, or maybe about how the neighborhood carabao keeps wandering into places it shouldn't. A light joke escapes your lips. You mutter that these jars probably know more village secrets than any person alive, and at least 4 of them could blackmail you if they developed motor skills. The night doesn't disagree. You crouch beside the nearest jar and lift a corner of its cloth. A light puff of acidic aroma escapes, tangy, alive, a little rebellious. Fresh tuba begins sweet, almost floral, but as it ferments, it sharpens into something that makes your eyes blink faster than you'd care to admit. Historically, coastal communities across the Philippines relied on tuba not just as a drink but as a trade item. Spanish records from the 1600s even mention its popularity among sailors who appreciated any beverage that didn't instantly try to kill them. You remind yourself that tuba vinegar is much gentler than the liquor version. No surprise ambushes from fermented fury tonight. Probably. A fringe tidbit floats to mind. In some older folk practices, tuba fermenters would whisper short blessings over the jars to teach the vinegar good manners. You love this notion, training a liquid like a puppy. You're half tempted to whisper something motivational, but the night air already sounds like it's humming, so you let tradition rest. You take a wooden ladle and dip it slowly into the jar. The liquid inside has shifted into a cloudy amber, swirling like a small galaxy that smells faintly of fruit, sea breeze, and that one time you overcooked rice and refused to admit it. You bring the ladle close, take a careful sniff, and feel the warmth settle behind your eyes. Coconut vinegar is gentle but assertive, like an auntie who speaks softly while handing you food you definitely didn't ask for. You transfer a small portion into a wooden bowl for tasting and step back under the dim lamplight. You give the bowl a slow swirl, pretending you're doing a dramatic wine tasting. Your inner narrator kicks in with something ridiculous about detecting notes of rebellion, footpaths, and existential humidity. You take the tiniest sip. It's surprisingly smooth at first, then bright, then sharp enough to remind you that you're still very much awake even though your eyelids have begun to negotiate bedtime terms. A nearby bamboo table holds strips of ginger, bruised garlic, and a few small red chilies, the aromatics waiting to be introduced to tonight's vinegar batch. You gather them, feeling the satisfying snap of the ginger fibers under your fingertips. You crush the garlic with the side of a knife, and the sound echoes softly through the hut. There's something deeply grounding about preparing ingredients this slowly, as though you're negotiating with time instead of fighting it. You pour the aromatic vinegar blend into a smaller clay jar, sealing it with cloth and tying it tight. The resulting infusion will rest for days, maybe weeks. These slow kitchen rituals don't care about your modern impatience. They live in a timeline where flavor grows only with waiting, the way friendships deepen with long, unhurried conversations on warm nights like this. A scholarly debate sneaks in while you work. Historians still argue whether coconut vinegar techniques first spread through ancient sea trade networks or whether they grew independently across island communities that separately discovered fermentation by accident, possibly while hiding from storms or from relatives asking for favors. Either way, every jar here is a descendant of someone's curiosity. A gecko chirps overhead, punctuating your thoughts like an enthusiastic footnote. You glance up and joke quietly that you'll give it credit as a co-author. The gecko blinks, unimpressed. You step outside again, carrying the bowl of fresh tuber vinegar with you, and let the night breeze cool its surface. The moonlight brushes the liquid, turning it faintly silver. You breathe it in one last time before covering it and setting it beside the others. The jars settle into a soft chorus of stillness, the kind that makes you feel like you've stumbled into a council meeting of very patient elders. You wipe your hands on your shirt, because of course you forgot the towel somewhere inside, and stretch your back with a small groan. The coconut palms rustle, the jars hum, and the night air feels like it's leaning in, waiting for whatever you'll do next. And you, with the lingering tang of vinegar still tickling your senses, feel yourself sinking deeper into the slow, fragrant rhythm of the evening. Each step, each breath, each tiny task tethers you more firmly to this quiet world where nothing is rushed and everything matters. You drift back toward the kitchen with that faint vinegar tang still clinging to your senses, and the air grows warmer again, thicker, heavier, like the night is exhaling right onto your face. You follow the soft glow of embers until you reach another corner of this slow Filipino kitchen, the smoke hut where copra dries. The scent hits you instantly. It's smoky, sweet, woody, and a little clingy, like a perfume that refuses to respect personal boundaries. You cough once, dramatically, because your lungs enjoy theatrical performances. A row of low racks sits beneath a raised bamboo platform, and on those racks lay halved coconuts whose white flesh has begun turning ivory gold from long hours of drying. These are the workhorses of the coconut world, destined for oil, soap, trade, and sometimes dramatic storytelling depending on which auntie is recounting family history. You step closer, feeling the dry heat lick your arms like a friendly salamander. This place smells like tradition gently smoldering. A nearby fire pit, ringed by stones, fed with coconut husks and driftwood, crackles with lazy confidence. You poke at it with a stick, pretending you know what you're doing. A spark jumps out like it's auditioning for a fireworks show. You mutter a quiet joke about how even the fire here is more energetic than you on a Monday morning. The flames seem pleased. A mainstream historical fact warms its way into your thoughts. By the early 20th century, the Philippines was one of the world's largest producers of copra, exporting tons of dried coconut meat to factories that turned it into soap and oil. You can almost imagine the trade ships creaking with the weight of it all, smelling faintly of smoke and salted air. Somewhere in the background, an ancestor probably grumbled about prices not being what they used to be, an eternal human pastime. You crouch to examine the nearest coconut halves. When you tap one with your fingertip, it gives a hollow sound, the unmistakable sign that the moisture has mostly departed, replaced by the rich, smoky perfume of long drying. The edges of the meat shrink slightly from the shell, curling inward like they are hugging themselves against the heat. In some coastal communities, it was once common to leave small offerings near the copra racks, usually rice grains or even a splash of tuber, to appease fire guardians believed to watch over the drying process. Whether they were spirits, ancestors, or simply metaphors for not burning down your hut, no one seems entirely sure. You glance at the fire. If anyone deserves a snack, it's definitely that hard-working little blaze. You turn the coconut halves carefully, one by one, using a bamboo tong polished by decades of similar movements. The rhythm of flipping them becomes a quiet meditation, simple, repetitive, almost hypnotic. You breathe in, breathe out, and feel a faint sheen of sweat forming on your forehead. Congratulations, you're now both a cook and a human humidifier again. As you work, you hear hushed voices drifting in from just outside the hut. Two elders sit on upturned buckets, gossiping while keeping one eye on the smoke. They nod toward you with a kind of approving grunt, the universal sound that means you're doing fine and they're not going to help unless something catches fire. The conversation they're having is the perfect soundtrack, half rumor, half wisdom, half completely unverifiable. You love it. You ask one elder about their earliest memory of making copra. He chuckles and says it involved chasing a goat out of the drying racks because it kept trying to eat the coconut meat before it finished. You blink. You did not have goat invasion on your bingo card tonight, but here we are. You settle onto a low stool, giving the copra time to transform further. The smoke rises in slow, soft ribbons, curling through the bamboo slats and carrying with it the stories of anyone who's ever tended these fires. Historians still argue whether early copra drying techniques were more influenced by indigenous fire drying methods or by trade interactions with South Asian merchants who had their own ways of preserving coconut. You suspect they'll still be arguing long after you're gone, while some elder here just shrugs and says, "We dry it because it works." You check the texture of a piece. The flesh feels tough, almost leathery, and breaks with a satisfying snap. Perfect. You gather the dried pieces into a woven basket, the surface warm against your palms. As you pile them up, a fine dust of smoke-kissed coconut flakes settles over your hands like tiny, fragrant snowflakes. You take the basket outside for cooling, setting it on a low bench where the night breeze can greet it. The scent that rises is earthy and deep, a far cousin of the fresh coconut you cracked earlier. This is its older, wiser sibling, the one who has stories, tax advice, and suspiciously specific knowledge about local gossip. As the copra cools, you lean back, stretching your spine and letting out a sigh that could qualify as a monologue. The stars blink overhead, and for a moment, you imagine each coconut on the racks glowing softly like small, smoky lanterns. You feel the kitchen's rhythm settling into your bones, the slow burn, the patient waiting, the entire world shrinking to the glow of a fire and the whisper of drying coconut. You didn't expect smoke to feel this comforting. But here you are, sitting beside a fire that has no interest in your deadlines, watching a harvest turn into something that will last far longer than the night. And in that warm, drifting haze of smoke and silence, you feel something loosen in your chest, something tired, something restless, soften and settle like copra cooling on the bench. You return to the heart of the kitchen carrying the faint, smoky perfume of dried copra on your clothes, and the moment you step inside, you feel the warmth shift. It's no longer the dry, crackling heat of the smoke hut, it's gentler, thicker, almost buttery. The kind that hugs you instead of judging you. You know instantly what comes next. Tonight, you're stepping into one of the oldest, slowest, most meditative coconut rituals of all, rendering coconut oil. A clay pot sits at the center of the stove, its rounded belly already warm from the embers beneath it. Inside, freshly pressed coconut milk pools like a pale river, still calm, still cool, still hiding the transformation it's about to endure. You roll up your sleeves, an act that feels symbolic even though your sleeves aren't really doing much, and take a slow breath. A tiny voice in your head whispers, "You probably won't survive this arm workout," and you nod in grim agreement. Stirring coconut milk into oil is a test of patience, forearm resilience, and your ability to pretend you're not sweating into your own future cooking. You grab the long wooden ladle, its handle darkened from decades of use. One elder once claimed it was older than your attitude, which felt rude, but also plausible, given the state of your attitude at the time. You lower the ladle into the milk and give it the first long, deliberate stir. It feels cool against the wood, smooth, innocent. You know better. Coconut milk looks harmless, but it demands the kind of attention usually reserved for houseplants on the brink of death. As the fire warms the pot, the fragrance deepens. A soft, sweet scent rises, familiar and comforting, the early signature of oil just beginning to separate. A mainstream historical fact drifts through your memory. Long before commercial factories, Filipino households across the islands relied on small-batch coconut oil for everything, from cooking and hair care to lamps that burned through the night. Coconut oil was, in many ways, the light and flavor of whole villages. You stir a little more proudly after remembering that. Minutes pass in gentle circles, then tens of minutes. You settle into the rhythm, wrist turning, ladle scraping the bottom of the pot with a tiny wooden sigh each time. The milk begins to curdle lightly, forming soft, grainy clusters that float like sleepy islands. These curds, Latig's second cousin, will eventually brown and separate entirely, leaving golden oil behind. Some old cooks used to evaluate coconut oil quality by holding it to the sky and reading omens in the way the light refracted. You wonder briefly if they predicted weather, fortunes, or whether their neighbor was going to return that missing bilao tray. The pot bubbles softly in response. Maybe all three. You continue stirring until beads of oil begin glimmering at the surface, like tiny suns being born one at a time. The mixture thickens, sound shifting subtly from a low simmer to an encouraging gurgle. Steam brushes your cheeks, leaving you glistening like someone who has absolutely lied about enjoying cardio. The pot's aroma evolves too, richer now, warmer, carrying that unmistakable nutty promise of coconut oil. You lean in, inhale, and feel your shoulders soften. There's something deeply grounding about watching something transform through nothing but heat and patience. You could almost hear the kitchen whisper, "See? Not everything needs rushing." Historians still argue whether coconut oil production methods traveled through seafaring trade routes or developed independently across Austronesian cultures who already had their own fire-based cooking traditions. You stir through this thought, watching small brown curds, the two-tone bits, rise and float as the oil grows clearer. The debate doesn't matter much here. The pot knows only what it has always known: wait, warm, transform. When the mixture finally turns translucent gold, your breath catches a little. It's beautiful. The curds have browned into tiny, crispy flecks that dance each time you stir. The oil glows like a lantern cradled in clay. You remove the pot from the heat and let it settle. A few minutes later, you take a clean cheesecloth and pour the oil through it, filtering out the brown solids. The stream of gold that falls into the waiting jar looks almost like melted sunlight. Warm. Luminous. If the sun ever opened a skincare brand, it would look like this. A joke slips from your mouth uninvited. You murmur that this jar now contains enough coconut magic to fix both frizzy hair and emotional damage. The night air does not disagree. You seal the jar with a woven cap and turn it slowly in your hands. The cooled oil coats the glass with a tenderness that feels both practical and ceremonial. You set it down carefully beside the vinegar jars, and it joins the growing lineup of quiet achievements the night has coaxed from you. As the fire dims to a soft red hush, you sit back on your heels and rest. The room smells like warmth, patience, and a hint of toasted sweetness. Your arms ache just enough to remind you that some traditions require a body's full involvement. You lift the jar one more time, letting the lamplight flicker through it. It gleams. And somewhere between the glow, the cooling embers, and the coconut-scented air, you feel yourself soften into the gentle pride of a ritual well kept. You settle onto a low wooden stool as the late afternoon light pours into the open kitchen like warm gold, soft and syrupy. By now, You've learned that every part of this village's coconut rituals carries a rhythm, slow, deliberate, patient. But the ritual of making coconut oil, the elders tell you, is different. This one is about listening. Not to commands, not to recipes, not to some strict measure of time, but to murmurs, soft shifts in scent, sound, and shimmer. They say coconut oil speaks if you let it, and today, under a settling sun, you decide to hear it. A clay pot sits before you, heavy with thick, pale coconut cream you helped extract earlier in the day. Prana, the eldest woman in this part of the village, stands at your side, her hair in a long braid streaked with silver. She holds a wooden ladle carved from driftwood and passes it to you with a tiny nod. The fire has already been set under the pot, nothing fierce, just a low, steady flame fed by dry coconut husks. Anything too eager burns the story, she says, and though you aren't sure what story she means, you accept the ladle anyway. The first stir is slow, and the cream resists in that gentle, pudding-like way you recognize from earlier cooking rituals. You ease the ladle around the rim, watching the thick white surface fold in on itself. The coconut scent is clean and soft, but not yet deep. The cream still holds the coolness of its earlier squeezing, the memory of its own solidity. It will let go at its own time, Prana murmurs, crouching beside you. Her knees crack softly as she settles, like twigs acknowledging their age. Minutes become more minutes, and your arm moves in small circles. The fire pops now and then, sending a hint of smoke into the air. A dog barks far away. A child laughs. The sea whispers somewhere down the hill. And through all of that, the cream thickens, thins, thickens again, as if deciding who it wants to be. Soon, you feel it loosen slightly beneath your stirring, and a faint, sweet scent begins to deepen in the warm air. It's richer than the smell of raw coconut, something toasted, mellow, almost buttery. You hear it yet? Prana asks. You blink. Hear what? She taps the side of the pot. The tiny murmurs. Not of sound, of intention. You almost laugh, but then you notice how she's watching the mixture, her eyes narrowed, as if the cream is whispering secrets. You lean in closer. Sure enough, faint bubbles rise near the center, tiny ones that boast softly, in a way that suggests more warmth gathering underneath. The cream has started to thin, turning vaguely translucent. It's subtle, easy to miss unless you're paying attention. But you are, now more than ever. The elders believe oil is coaxed, not extracted. Forced heat will scorch it. Impatience will cloud it. But gentle persistence, this transforms it. And so you stir, and stir, and stir. Your wrist begins to ache, but you don't stop. Something about the circle, the scrape of the ladle, the slow evolving scent, it pulls you into a kind of meditative drift. For a moment, it feels as if the coconut cream is breathing, rising and settling in time with your motions. As the mixture warms further, you see the first visible separation, tiny clear streaks forming among the milky white folds. They glisten like early morning dew on leaves. Prana sees it too and nods approvingly. It's speaking louder now, she whispers, as if to avoid startling it. You keep stirring. The fire stays low. The cream keeps changing. The clear streaks widen, multiply. And then, in a slow, graceful shift, the entire mixture begins to look less like cream and more like a loose, swirling froth. You smell something deeper now, like warm rice fields after harvest, sweetened with the faintest caramel edge. The scent almost wraps itself around you. The village seems quieter than before, as if even the wind has paused to listen. Eventually, the mixture undergoes its most dramatic transformation yet. The froth collapses gently into a golden liquid, thin but shimmering with life. Bits of brown solids float to the surface like tiny drifting islands. The oil, true oil, has finally emerged. You hadn't realized how intently you were watching until Hrana gives a small approving hum. There, she sighs. You've guided it. She takes the ladle from you and gestures for you to look closely. See, she says, lifting a spoonful. The oil catches the light, glowing like the late afternoon sun trapped in liquid form. There is something mesmerizing about its clarity, something that makes you feel you have crossed a small but meaningful threshold. This is not just cooking. This is alchemy of patience. Before you can respond, Hrana dips a spoon into the pot and drips a small bit of oil onto your wrist. It is hot, warm enough to shock you, but beneath the heat lies a softness that spreads along your skin. For healing, she says. For stories. For remembering. She wipes the browning solids from the spoon and tosses them onto a plate lined with banana leaves. And this, she adds, we eat. You laugh, surprised. Eat the burnt bits. They're not burnt, she corrects you with a playful frown. They are the toasted truths of the coconut. You taste one. It is sweet, nutty, crunchy, almost like tiny coconut croutons with a hint of caramel. The perfect snack after hours of stirring. With the oil now separated, you and Hrana begin the final ritual, straining. A clean piece of woven cloth is stretched over a clay jar, and slowly, carefully, the pot is tilted. The golden liquid pours through in a long, unbroken stream. It looks impossibly pure, like sunlight that has been patiently persuaded into physical form. As the jar fills, Hrana places her palm lightly against it, whispering something you cannot quite catch. A blessing, maybe. Or a thanks. When the last drop falls, she stops the pot and covers the jar with a banana leaf lid. It must rest, she says softly. Every good thing must rest. She wipes her hands on her skirt and then yours, as if transferring the ritual's residue to you intentionally. Outside, the sky has shifted into a deep orange wash, the color of warm embers. You step out with her into the open air, and the evening breeze touches your face like a familiar friend. She tells you this batch of oil will be used for massage, for cooking, for balms against sunburn, for night lamps during the next festival. Coconut oil, she says, is the village's quiet keeper. It listens more than it speaks. And now, she says, so do you. You walk back toward the central clearing, the faint scent of toasted coconut still clinging to your hair and clothes. The jar of newly made oil sits behind you in the kitchen, cooling, settling, remembering the long afternoon of murmurs. You feel a calm fullness in your chest, the kind that comes when you have taken part in something older than written memory. Tonight, you will sleep with that scent in your mind, and with the echo of Hrana's words. Listen long enough, and even silence teaches flavor. The morning begins with a hush so soft it feels deliberate, as if the village itself has agreed to keep its voice low for the sake of something sweet. You step outside your small hut and find the world wrapped in that mild golden light that arrives just before the sun fully commits to the day. A few roosters call out, but even they seem gentler than usual, as though they too understand that today is for panutsa, the coconut sugar discs that hide centuries of quiet craft behind their simple shape. You follow the faint tapping sounds coming from the communal hut where sweet things are usually made. The air grows warmer as you approach, carrying an aroma that is deep and earthy and sweet, like caramel's rustic cousin. Inside, you see two elders, Lyra and Thomas, sitting cross-legged beside a heavy iron pan set atop a low fire. Before them lies the treasure of the day, blocks of Jagra-like coconut sugar, dark and grainy, wrapped in banana leaves that have been folded with the neat precision of habit. Thomas looks up as you enter. There you are, he says in a voice that rumbles like a distant storm. We were waiting for the guest with good stirring arms. You laugh, but the warmth in the room tells you the invitation is sincere. Lyra slides a small wooden stool toward you. Sit, she says. Today you will see why panutsa is the sweet that hides nothing, except time. The fire beneath the pan is kept low, just as you learned in the oil-making ritual days earlier. Patience, always patience, is the first ingredient. Thomas lifts a block of coconut sugar and hands it to you. It is heavier than you expect, packed with the condensed stories of countless coconut blossoms. You turn it in your hand, feeling the rough texture, the way it seems to hold sunlight that has darkened over time. Smell it, Lyra urges. You do. And the aroma is astonishing, smoky, buttery, with a depth that hints at molasses and warm fruit. This is the fragrance of transformation slowed to its most deliberate pace. Thomas gestures for you to drop the block into the pan. When it lands, it makes a dull, satisfying thud. The fire's heat starts to coax the sugar into softening. Within moments, edges begin to dissolve, forming puddles of syrup that thicken as they spread. The smell intensifies, richer now, a scent that could make anyone think of warm afternoons and sticky childhood fingers. As the sugar melts, Lyra hands you a long wooden paddle with a slightly curved end. Stir gently, she instructs. Not fast. Not forcefully. Let the sugar tell you the speed. You sink the paddle into the thickening syrup. It gives way slowly, then drags with resistance, like honey that has been sitting in a chilled jar. You pull through, watching the dark liquid swirl, catching the light in fleeting amber flashes. It's mesmerizing, hypnotic. A sweet tide pool of glowing brown. Lyra watches closely. Good, she says. Just enough movement so it doesn't settle into bitterness. You glance at her. Bitterness. Yes, Thomas chimes in from behind you. Sugar burns for one of two reasons: too much flame or too much impatience. You maintain the slow rhythm, feeling the syrup loosen its hold on the pan bit by bit. The kitchen hums only with the sound of your stirring and the quiet crackle of the fire. Even the outside world seems muted, as if the village has agreed not to disturb the sweetness forming under your hand. Once the sugar reaches a glossy, liquid state, Lyra adds a small bowl of finely grated coconut. The tiny white shreds scatter across the surface, floating like bits of driftwood on dark water. You stir them in, and the mixture thickens instantly, becoming almost dough-like. The aroma deepens again, expanding to fill the room with something round and comforting, like the scent of a grandmother's kitchen in a storybook. Thomas brings out a tray of wooden molds, simple rounded impressions carved into a white board. These are older than anyone alive now, he says, brushing a hand across them. Some are smoother than others, worn by decades of cooling sugar discs. When the mixture in the pan begins to pull away from the sides in a slow, heavy sheet, Lyra nods. Time, she declares. The next steps unfold in a practice dance. Thomas lifts the pan carefully off the heat, and the three of you gather around it like conspirators. Lyra dips a coconut shell ladle into the syrup and pours the molten sweetness into each mold with steady hands. As it falls, the mixture makes little plopping sounds, each one an announcement of a perfect disc in the making. The moment the syrup hits the wooden molds, it begins to set. The surface shifts from glossy liquid to a soft matte sheen, like caramel exhaling. You lean closer to observe the texture, but Thomas taps your shoulder gently. Careful, he warns. Sweetness burns fiercer than fire. You pull back with a sheepish grin. The discs cool slowly, releasing a fragrance so comforting it almost feels like an embrace. While waiting, Thomas cuts a small piece from the bit left on the edges of the pan, a still soft scrap that didn't make it into the molds. He offers it to you. A maker's privilege, he says. You taste it. It is astonishing. Rich but not heavy, caramel sweet but grounded by the coconut's earthy warmth. There's a hint of smoke, a dash of saltiness from the air, and a lingering sweetness that refuses to leave your tongue. This, you think, is a flavor that carries memory in its fibers. When the panutsa discs have cooled completely, Lyra lifts one from its mold and holds it out to you. It is firm, smooth, warm but no longer pliable. The color is deep amber, almost glowing in the morning sun. These, she says, are for sharing. No one makes panutsa just for themselves. She wraps several discs in banana leaves and presses them into your hands. The leaves are still faintly warm, softening around the edges where the heat has touched them. Give these to the children playing near the water, she says. Tell them it is sweetness made with steady hands. You carry the wrapped bundle down the small slope to the waterfront. The sea breeze meets you halfway, cool and briny. A group of children spot you immediately, their eyes lighting up when they see the familiar green-wrapped shapes. They run toward you with excited shouts, and you kneel to hand out the discs one by one. Their laughter rises like birds taking flight. Nearby, two fishermen pause in untangling their nets to watch the scene. One of them smiles. "Ah," he says, "first panutsa of the season. Good omen." You stand there for a moment, watching the children break their discs into pieces, sharing them with each other without hesitation. The sweetness becomes a small celebration, a circle expanding outward. As you walk back toward the communal hut, the empty banana leaves rustling in your hand, you realize that Lyra was right. Panutsa hides nothing, except the quiet, steady patience it takes to make sweetness that endures. And now, you carry that sweetness with you too. The path to the shoreline curves gently, as if shaped by generations of bare feet choosing the same soft bends in the earth. You follow it now, the scent of panutsa still clinging faintly to your fingertips. The air grows saltier with each step, and the muted roar of waves rises like a slow-breathing companion. You arrive at the beach just as the tide pulls back, revealing glistening patches of sand pocked with tiny crab tracks. The morning sun scatters itself across the water, turning everything into shifting sheets of silver. Here, where land meets sea, you find something that the village never bothers to explain because it feels obvious to everyone except newcomers like you. The shoreline is its own quiet workshop. You crouch beside a cluster of discarded coconut shells and husks that the tide has pushed ashore. Some are bleached pale by weeks under the sun, others are dark and waterlogged, their fibers fraying like old rope. They look like refuse, but you've already learned that in this village, refuse is simply an invitation. A thin old man with a posture like a question mark approaches, dragging a small net behind him. You met him once, briefly. His name is Ogoi, the unofficial keeper of beach secrets and the proud owner of the village's slowest fishing boat. He eyes you with mild suspicion, but only because you're hovering over what he considers prime material. You planning to sit there all day or actually pick one up? He asks, his tone dry enough to rival low tide. You smile and choose a shell with a naturally curved edge. He nods his approval. Good. That one wants to become a tool. He says it so casually that you almost miss how strange it sounds. Wants to become? You decide not to question it. You've learned by now that the villagers often describe objects as having intentions, especially coconut tools. Ogoi gestures for you to follow him to a shaded spot beneath a leaning pandan tree. There, arranged in a small semicircle, lie several improvised tools. A coconut shell ladle with a bamboo handle, a husk scrubbing pad, and a shard of shell sharpened into a surprisingly effective knife. They each look like they've lived several hard-working lifetimes. You see, Ogoi begins, settling onto a smooth rock with a small grunt. The sea shapes things differently from how the kitchen does. Fire softens. Water teaches patience. He hands you a piece of coral, its surface rough but not jagged. Use this. Rub the edge of that shell. Slow, steady. You're not trying to force it into shape. You're listening for what shape it already wants to be. You suspect he's exaggerating for effect, but you play along. You begin to file the shell's edge with the coral. It's surprisingly satisfying, each slow scrape releasing a fine powder that drifts away on the breeze. The rhythm finds you, the same way the stirring of lattic did, the same way the rice cake steam seemed to breathe with you. There's a pattern in this village. If something is worth doing, it will ask for slowness. Ogoi leans in to inspect your work. Historians still argue whether early coastal communities used shell tools out of necessity or out of preference. Personally, I think it's because people are lazy and shells were just lying around, he says with a sly grin. You snort, nearly dropping the coral. Is that the official academic position? Absolutely, he replies. At least in my academy. He goes on to show you how shells with naturally curved tips make excellent scrapers for removing burnt bits from clay pots. He picks up another shaped shard, taps it against a coconut husk, and demonstrates how it shaves off fibers cleanly to make coir rope. He hands it to you, and you try it yourself. The fibers peel away like thin ribbons, releasing a faint grassy smell mixed with ocean salt. Nearby, the tide coughs up a half-rotted husk tangled with seaweed. Ogoi retrieves it without hesitation, twists off a clean chunk, and holds it to you. Feel this, he says. This piece is soft from the water. Makes good padding for hot pots. All from just rolling around out here while you were busy sleeping. You press the husk between your palms. It's springy, cool, and surprisingly insulating. Exactly the sort of thing you'd take for granted unless an old beach wizard pointed it out. As he gathers more washed-up debris, Ogoi recounts one of his favorite fringe tales. Some say the first coconut spoon washed ashore already shaped, carried from an island no one remembers. A gift from wandering spirits with bad table manners. Probably nonsense. He shrugs. Still, a good story. You chuckle. This village is full of them, stories half believed, half mocked, but never fully dismissed. You continue shaping your shell, smoothing its edges until they feel like they were carved intentionally. Ogoi inspects it again and nods. Not bad. That one'll make a proper rice scooper. Just don't try to fight a ball with it. You probably won't survive that. His deadpan delivery makes the joke land perfectly. When your shell tool is finished, he shows you the final step, rubbing a little coconut oil onto the surface to seal it. You do, and the shell transforms instantly, glowing with a deeper sheen, its patterns more visible, like tiny brushstrokes from the sea itself. You've made your first seaside tool, Ogoi declares. A good one. The kind that lasts if you treat it gently. You tuck it carefully into your belt, oddly proud. It's small, humble, but undeniably yours. The breeze picks up, carrying the smell of salt, sun-warmed sand, and distant cooking fires. You glance back at the waves and spot a few more shells tumbling in the shallow surf. Each of them could become something, if given time. Time. The one ingredient this village never rushes. As you walk inland, your new shell tool tapping softly against your leg, you feel the quiet continuity of it all. From fire to sand, from kitchen to sea, every object, every ritual, every taste is part of a long conversation between people and place. And you're finally learning to listen. The afternoon sun has begun its slow slide downward, painting the village in the kind of honeyed light that makes everything look slightly nostalgic, even things that haven't happened yet. You can already hear it, the clatter of bowls, the soft thuds of knives meeting chopping boards, and the distant laughter of children who have worked out, well before you did, that tonight's preparations mean tomorrow will be a celebration. You follow the smell before you follow the sound. It's unmistakable, sweet, milky, tropical, and festive all at once. Halo weather. Though, in this village, they'd never say it like that. They'd say the breeze has become dessert-shaped, which you're pretty sure is not a meteorological term but feels right anyway. You arrive at the communal patio to find half the village already gathered, moving with the calm purpose of people who know exactly what needs doing, but have absolutely no intention of rushing while doing it. This is, after all, pre-festival time. Some communities prepare with drums and dance. This one prepares with coconut. Your role becomes clear the moment Talia, the unofficial queen of cool desserts, spots you. She points at a low bench beside her. Sit. Your hands look underutilized. Her tone is airy but authoritative, the kind that makes people comply without fully realizing why. You sit. In front of you is a mountain of coconut strips, all freshly shaved, piled high like snowfall from the tropics. Their scent rises gently, a soft mix of sweetness and fat and something faintly floral. Talia hands you a bowl filled with cold water. Rinse, she instructs, but rinse like someone who enjoys being alive. You do your best impression of joyful rinsing. The coconut strips slip coolly between your fingers, crisp and slightly firm, just right for the chewy layer halo demands. Historians still argue whether early halo was inspired by Japanese kakigori or if Filipinos simply decided one day that shaved ice needed as many toppings as humanly possible, Talia says casually, as if it's small talk. Personally, I think it was invented by an indecisive ancestor who said yes to everything. You grin. And now we honor that ancestor by also saying yes to everything. Exactly, she replies. It is cultural continuity. And also delicious. Around you, the work unfolds like a soft practiced orchestra. Someone is slicing jackfruit, its syrupy sweetness perfuming the air. Another person is rinsing red beans, each tiny pebble making a faint tapping sound in the metal bowl. A group of teenagers are laughing as they shave ice by hand, tiny crystalline flakes flying everywhere like tropical snow. You catch a few specks on your arm, they melt instantly, leaving a cool trail behind. Then comes the coconut milk simmering at the center of it all. A clay pot sits over a low fire, its lid slightly askew. Wisps of steam curl out, carrying a smell so comforting it almost trips you into nostalgia you don't technically own. The milk is infused with pandan leaves, their grassy sweet aroma threading through the richness. This isn't the watery pour-over you get in city dessert shops. This is thick, creamy, full-bodied coconut milk, the kind that's been coaxed from the first squeeze. The kind that tastes like someone's best memory. Talia lifts the lid and you see it. The pale surface trembling gently, soft bubbles gathering like sleepy eyes. She ladles a small spoonful into a bowl and hands it to you. Taste, she says. For quality control. You taste. You briefly forget your name. It's rich without being heavy, sweet without being cloying, and infused with a fragrance that sits somewhere between vanilla and fresh leaves after rain. Talia nods knowingly. Good. If it tasted bad, we'd start over. That's the rule. Her deadpan tone makes you unsure whether she's joking. Probably. A group of children run by carrying strips of gelatin that wobble like excited puppies. One of them waves at you. We're coloring the ice later, he shouts, as though this is top secret intel. You wave back solemnly, acknowledging the gravity of his mission. Beside you, an elderly man named Pidong prepares coconut sport, macapuno, the strange naturally gelatinous variety that seems as though it was invented solely to confuse botanists. He scoops it out of its shell with a slow, deliberate rhythm, the strands stretching like soft elastic. Some say macapuno trees appear only when spirits feel generous, he says. Others say it's just genetics. He shrugs. I prefer the first explanation. More dramatic. You continue rinsing coconut strips until your fingers wrinkle. Then Talia shifts you to another task, layering ingredients into glass jars. She demonstrates the order with near-religious seriousness. First beans, because they are humble. Then the fruits, because they are loud. Then the coconut, because it listens. Then the ice, because it does not care about hierarchy. And finally the milk, because it brings everyone together. You follow her instructions exactly. Each jar forms its little landscape, bands of brown, yellow, white, and red, capped with a mountain of shaved ice so fluffy it looks like the world's softest avalanche. The jars are sealed and stored in woven baskets lined with palm leaves to keep them cool. Tomorrow morning, they'll be taken to the festival grounds, where people will line up under sunshades, sweaty and excited, ready to eat something that tastes like relief. As the last rays of sun dissolve behind the trees, someone uncovers a pot of warm sticky rice topped with, you guessed it, more coconut. It's the unofficial reward for the workers of the pre-festival shift. You all gather around, taking turns scooping soft servings into bowls. The warm rice meets the cool remnants of shaved ice still clinging to some people's sleeves, and the contrast somehow feels appropriate. You sit on the edge of the patio, bowl in hand, watching the sky deepen into a velvety purple. The sounds of cleanup drift around you. Laughter, the clatter of bowls, the soft hush of brooms sweeping stray flakes of ice. The whole village glows with the kind of energy that only comes when people work slowly, joyfully, for something they will share together. And as you scrape the last bit of coconut from your bowl, you realize something quietly beautiful. Making halo the night before a festival isn't just preparation. It's celebration already. Night settles over the village with a gentleness that feels almost rehearsed. The last streaks of sunset fade into a deep violet sky, and the first stars blink awake like shy fireflies. You walk slowly toward the central clearing, guided by the soft glow of oil lamps swaying in the warm breeze. Their coconut shell casings cast round pools of gold on the ground, as though tiny suns have lowered themselves to walk beside you. Tonight, you're not here to cook, stir, slice, or grate. Tonight is for listening. You find the elders gathered beneath the great Nora tree, the same spot where stories have been traded for as long as anyone remembers. The roots bulge from the ground like ancient knuckles, offering natural seats to anyone who trusts the tree not to shift beneath them. You settle onto one such root, its surface smooth from decades of people choosing that exact place to listen. The elders, Lyra, Ogoy, Thomas, and a few others you've seen in passing, sit in a loose circle around a clay pot of coconut embers. The glowing coals flicker and pulse, releasing a subtle perfume of warm shell and faint sweetness. It's not a cooking fire. It's a story fire. You came, Lyra says, smiling with the soft triumph of someone who expected you to arrive late. Good. The night is generous, and the trees are in the mood. You blink. The trees are in the mood. Ogoy waves a dismissive hand. Don't mind her. She means the wind is right. Then, leaning closer, he whispers conspiratorially, though between you and me, she talks to the coconut trees more than she talks to actual people. I heard that, Lyra replies. And the trees did too. Everyone chuckles, and the fire crackles approvingly. The elders launch into their stories with the ease of people who have told them countless times, but never the same way twice. Lyra starts with the tale of the first coconut, the mythic origin story you've heard whispers of but never fully understood. According to her, the coconut tree sprouted from the grave of a fallen moon spirit who loved the earth too much to stay in the sky. The spirit's body became the trunk, her eyes the three dimples on the shell, her heart the sweet water within. It's a dramatic myth, the kind that would make anthropologists salivate, but Lyra tells it like gossip, as though she personally knew the moon spirit and found her a bit too dramatic. Historians still argue whether stories like this are symbolic of pre-colonial agricultural practices or just evidence that our ancestors got bored easily, Thomas says, scratching his chin. But I prefer the version where the moon spirit had excellent hair. Of course you do, Ogoy mutters. The stories flow like warm coconut milk. Some are playful, some solemn, and some delightfully bizarre, like the one about the warrior who challenged a coconut tree to a staring contest and lost because the tree, obviously, never blinked. Or the fisherman who claimed the trees whispered directions to hidden shoals, though everyone suspects he just didn't want to reveal his secret fishing spots. A breeze stirs the leaves above you, and Lyra lifts her head slightly, as if listening. She closes her eyes and inhales. There, she murmurs. Did you hear it? You strain your ears. All you hear is the rustling of fronds and the distant crash of waves. Sounds like leaves, you say. Ogoy snorts. Exactly what a coconut tree would want you to think. You're not sure if he's joking, but you don't press for clarification. Thomas picks up a fresh coconut shell ladle and taps it lightly against the ground. There's a reason we make our tools from coconut, he says. Not just because they're useful. Not just because they're everywhere. But because using them makes you part of a conversation the land started long before you arrived. This is the kind of statement that sounds poetic until you try to think about it too hard. Then it twists into something quietly profound. The fire shifts, sending a warm glow over everyone's faces. Shadows dance along the tree trunk, making the bark seem alive. Lyra leans forward and begins a quieter story, her voice lowering to that soft register people instinctively use when sharing secrets. There are nights, she says, when the wind weaves through the palms just right, and the trees whisper to each other. Some say they're telling gossip. Some say they're warning about storms. And some say, she pauses, smiling mischievously, that they're complaining about how humans keep stealing their children. You stare. Their children. She taps a coconut shell with one finger. These. You look at the shell in your hand with new suspicion. I feel like I should apologize. No need, Ogoy says. The trees know we put their children to good use. We make food, tools, stories. They approve. He nods sagely, then adds, mostly. Mostly, you repeat. He waggles his eyebrows dramatically. There was that one time. Lyra throws a small husk at him. Do not tell that story. It is festival season, not nightmare season. You never find out what the forbidden story was. Probably for the best. Your imagination has already supplied several possibilities, each one more unhelpful for sleep than the last. The elders shift back into lighter tales. Legends about coconut spirits guiding lost travelers home, about trees bending their fronds toward people they like, about coconuts falling at just the right moment to interrupt an argument between lovers. You notice none of these stories are told as strict belief. They are more like affectionate superstitions, woven into daily life like subtle threads of humor and comfort. At one point, Thomas passes you a roasted coconut slice warmed near the fire. The exterior is caramelized, and when you bite into it, the soft interior tastes like smoke-kissed candy. It's the kind of snack you didn't know existed but now can't imagine living without. As the night deepens, children slowly drift in, some curling against their parents, others listening wide-eyed. The embers glow steadily, pulsing like a heartbeat. You feel yourself slowing too. Breath, thoughts, everything settling into the rhythm of stories older than memory. One of the elders leans toward you. You've cooked with us, she says softly. You've shared our milk, our sugar, our tools. But tonight you share our law. That makes you part of the circle. The quiet sincerity of her words warms you more than the fire. You sit a little straighter, not out of pride but out of gratitude. The wind rustles through the coconut fronds again. You listen closely this time, not because you expect to hear whispers, but because you finally understand why everyone pretends they do. It's not about belief. It's about belonging. And tonight, beneath the flickering glow of coconut embers and a sky full of attentive stars, you feel like you belong more than ever. The night grows heavier, softer, deeper, the way a blanket naturally settles over your shoulders when you finally stop fidgeting. The stories have slowed to a gentle trickle, each tale thinner and quieter than the last, like the final notes of a song drifting toward silence. The elders lean back against the roots and trunks around the clearing, their silhouettes melted into the darkness except for occasional highlights from the ember glow. You feel it too, that calm, grounding weight the villagers call ginhawa, a kind of inward sigh that settles over the body when everything feels just right. The ocean breathes audibly now, its distant rhythms syncing with your heartbeat until they seem to echo one another. You're not sure who starts the final story. Maybe Lyra. Maybe Thomas. Maybe the wind itself. It begins so subtly you only notice once you're already inside it. It isn't a legend this time, not a myth about moon spirits or talking trees. It's a memory, an old one, told in a tone that's neither heavy nor light, simply honest in the way truth becomes when it's been polished by retelling. The elders speak of the year the storms were relentless, when the sea swallowed half the beach and coconuts fell from the trees like stones hurled by invisible hands. They describe how families sheltered in the schoolhouse, how the wind roared so loudly no one could hear the person beside them unless they shouted. But the part they linger on is what happened after. On the third night, Ogoy says quietly, when the roof stopped peeling away and the rain softened, we stepped outside. The trees were battered. The land was wounded. But the coconuts, hundreds of fallen coconuts, were waiting. Thomas nods. And we gathered them. We cooked. We made what we could. We shared everything. It was the coconuts that carried us through. They don't say this as a miracle or a metaphor. Just a fact of life, that in the worst year many could remember, the trees provided enough for everyone to survive until help arrived. And that, Lyra finishes, tapping a fingertip gently on a shell beside her, is why we honor them. Not because of myths or spirits or stories, but because they held on when we needed them most. The clearing goes quiet in that full-bodied way, when silence feels deliberate instead of empty. Then something unexpected happens. Thomas lifts one of the glowing coconut embers with a pair of bamboo tongs and holds it up. The heat paints his features gold. Tonight, he says, you helped us honor the trees in a different way, by listening, by being here, by cooking with us and making food from what they gave. That matters. You're so surprised you almost forget to respond. I'm honored. You finally manage, and the words feel too small, too neat, too stitched together compared to what swells in your chest. Lyra smiles knowingly, as elders often do when they hear sincerity wrapped in uncertain phrasing. Before you sleep, she says, there's one more thing we give to guests who share our stories. She rummages through a woven basket and pulls out something small wrapped in palm leaf. She places it in your hands gently, as if it's something fragile. When you open the folds, you find a tiny carving, a mini coconut tree intricately shaped from the hard inner shell of a coconut. Its fronds are stylized, almost geometric, and the trunk is sanded smooth. It's a token, she explains. A reminder that every meal you cook carries the memory of the land it came from, and the people who taught you. You trace your thumb along the carved grooves. The craftsmanship is astonishing. The details are so fine it must have taken hours of delicate work. You don't know what to say. Gratitude sometimes feels too large for language. The embers crackle. A child yawns. Fireflies drift through the clearing like slow, curious sparks. Eventually, the circle begins to break apart. Families gather half-asleep children, couples walk quietly arm in arm, and elders stretch and groan with the relief of people who have spent a long time sitting in one place. You rise too, clutching the carved tree tightly but not too tightly, careful not to damage it. Sleep well, Ogoi calls to you, already shuffling away toward his hut. And if the trees whisper too loudly tonight, tell them to keep it down. Some of us are old. They can hear you, Lyra scolds playfully. Good, he replies. You walk back down the sandy path to where your own small shelter sits near the edge of the coconut grove. The moon hangs low, almost touching the horizon, bright enough to cast shadows but soft enough not to hurt your eyes. Coconut fronds sway overhead with a rustle so gentle it feels like a lullaby. Inside, you settle onto your mat, the night breeze brushing your skin. You place the carved coconut tree beside your pillow, where the moonlight finds it easily. Its shadow stretches across the woven floor mat, long and elegant, like a tiny guardian watching over your rest. You lie back and breathe deeply. The smell of roasted coconut still clings faintly to your clothes. The warmth of the stories lingers in your mind, weaving themselves into something slow and comforting. You can still hear the elders' laughter, their voices rising and falling like waves along the shoreline. Then you notice it, a sound just beyond the edge of sleep. A whisper of leaves outside, brushing against one another in the steady ocean breeze. It sounds exactly like, well, leaves. And yet, after everything tonight has given you, you allow yourself one tiny, indulgent thought. Maybe, just maybe, it's a good night. Your eyes grow heavy. The wind sighs. The coconut trees keep gentle watch. And sleep rises to meet you like an old friend, warm, familiar, and full of dreams that smell faintly of smoke, salt, and sweet, sweet coconut.